So long ago, in what's increasingly feeling like a galaxy that was so far away, buying a game actually meant the game followed you home. Physically. It wasn't some license sitting on a sterile menu somewhere that looked like a bank designed it. You owned an object. You owned a thing. Own being the most important word there. I mean, you had this chunky case, sometimes heavy manual. Hell, if you bought it used, you even got the added benefit of the weird smell of paper mixed with somebody else's basement. Sony just put a date on a shift that we all kind of saw coming. Starting in January 2028, they're pulling the plug on new physical PlayStation discs. Going forward, the pipeline is strictly digital. Now, what I'm not going to do is sit here and act like digital downloads are some curse placed upon society by a wizard with a fiber connection. Am I? Nah. No. Digital downloads are actually convenient as hell and pretty much all digital. I think a lot of gamers might be. There's something just undeniably magical about wanting to play something at midnight on a random Tuesday and just, having it. Granted, you probably shouldn't be shopping for games at midnight on a random Tuesday, but what can I say? I got a problem. And we're fortunately not here to talk about me, so mind your business. The issue with convenience is it usually demands some sort of a trade, and this one sees us trading a bunch of small rituals all at once. The physical shelf disappeared. The act of lending a copy to a friend and, quietly, it's something that you might never get it back, because you're not very confrontational and the passive-aggressive slight mentions that you're doing aren't really doing the job. Yeah, that's gone too, which kind of gets the old brain running. Like, hold up. When these things stop being objects that you can physically hold in your hand, did we actually lose more than just the plastic?
This is how you share your games on PS4.
Thanks.
PlayStation.
A lot of people have been calling it the death of physical media, which in hindsight, it probably might be, but it definitely wasn't an outright murder. It was more like one of those slow horror movie transformations. The one where nobody really notices the guy that you just let in is now profusely sweating in the corner. And to be fair, Sony didn't start the shift. They just finally said the quiet part out loud. I mean, Nintendo killed the Wii shop back in 2019, and the Wii U and 3DS eShops went dark back in 2023. Microsoft retired the 360 marketplace back in 2024, and now Sony's older stores are basically sitting there on death row. Now, let me be really clear before the comment section, puts their little referee shirts on. A store closing doesn't mean that your old purchases instantly explode. These companies generally still give you the ability to re-download your stuff. It's usually on the pretext of the foreseeable future, which honestly is probably one of the most depressing corporate phrases ever made. Like, thanks for the super comforting feeling that my childhood is now protected by a phrase that sounds like it was drafted in a board meeting where, you just know the snack selection was trash. You see, what foreseeable future actually means is that the door to buying those games is now officially closed, which effectively changes the status of the game from a product that you can discover to something you have to already know existed, which is a massive difference because when a game lives on a physical shelf, it can ambush you. You can discover it purely by accident. See a spine, flip over the box. Oh shit, what the hell is this? Digital storefronts don't have bargain bins. They have algorithms, and algorithms absolutely do not have that same chaotic energy as finding some cursed-looking PS2 game wedged between Madden 2003 and a copy of Shrek Super Party that somehow survived the war, which is the real story, right? Because the format completely changed how we lived with these games. See, for some people, physical games hold this bizarre power simply because it's a thing that exists in the room with you, whether your console's on or off. A digital list is whatever, but looking at a physical shelf, they told you exactly who that person was at that specific moment in their life. A shelf was basically a gaming autobiography, albeit one written in cheap plastic rectangles. You can scan their library and immediately pick up on things like, okay, this guy has WWF Warzone and WWF Attitude, but no WrestleMania 2000. Well, obviously this guy has terrible taste in wrestling games. These games are so bad. Or maybe they own 3 separate copies of Final Fantasy X, for reasons that frankly may never fully be understood. And the condition of the case was a thing too. I mean, a cracked PS1 jewel case definitely had some history to it. Same with those faded Blockbuster stickers and GameStop price tags that, absolutely refused to peel off cleanly. And then you had the manuals. I mean, you didn't just rip open a game and start blindly mashing start like some kind of savage, did you? You'd read the weirdly detailed character bios, you'd stare at those incredibly compressed postage side stamp screenshots, not to mention the thick paper layer of map lore and, those customer support numbers that you were never ever gonna call. But be honest, sitting in the back seat or on the bus on the way home while you had the case open, you were absorbing those little booklets. That was the actual loading screen for the game. Our imaginations did these games far more justice than the trailer ever could. You don't really get that anticipation with a digital download. Having that physical object in your hand, that lets the experience start way before you even pick up the controller. And getting your hands on the game, that was a whole adventure onto itself. You had to go out to Funko Land, KB, Toys R Us, Dragon's Den, your local mall, the place where you and your friends actively loitered when you didn't have any money. But this time you were a paying customer. So you picked up the boxes, you flipped them over, you tried to decode which was the one using exactly 3 muddy screenshots and a half a dozen buzzwords from the marketing department that was printed on the box. And coming from a family that saw gaming as either a waste of time or a waste of money because, they had other financial responsibilities, the stakes were incredibly high here. I mean, in most cases, you were getting exactly 1 game. Maybe 2 if that birthday money was really hidden. So a lot of the times, the box had to actively convince me to part ways with said cash. The back cover was basically selling you a dream. I mean, the publishers knew it too. They always designed those screenshots to make the game look 10 times bigger than what was ever actually on the disc. And yet, sometimes they straight up lied to your face. But honestly, even that bullshit marketing became part of the memory. I mean, you had the magazine ads, the bulky strategy guides, those weird little pre-order flyers, those fold-out advertisements that came jammed inside the case for games you didn't even know existed. All that extra paper surrounding a game became like its atmosphere. Yeah, don't even get me started on the rentals, which was a whole other ecosystem onto itself. You'd pop open a Blockbuster case like you were inspecting a crime scene. Of course, the manual was definitely missing. This looked like they damn near drag it across a parking lot, but be damned if you didn't pop it in and still somehow boot it up. Borrowing games was like a whole other thing. I mean, handing somebody your copy of a game was like a social contract, that sometimes solidified a friendship. On the flip side, sometimes it revealed that your friend was nothing but a petty criminal all along. I mean, who borrows a game for 6 months, then acts completely surprised and confused when you finally ask for it back? Now, to be all fair and balanced and stuff, digital sharing exists. Family accounts and library permissions are a thing, but pressing a button to grant access just doesn't hit the same way as handing somebody a chunky case. That moment carried actual weight, mainly because you were never quite sure if you were ever going to see that game again or in what condition it was going to be returned to you.
Look, you been chewing on this shit before you came?
Okay, look. So I need to be fair here because, if we don't, this basically turned into a rant about how the old days were flawless. And, if we do that, then we're completely negating the fact that licensed movie games from 2004 are in fact a thing. I mean, the truth is digital really didn't take over by accident. It won because it fixed actual annoying problems. Weather, for instance, is no longer a thing when it comes to going out and buying games. I mean, obviously, weather is still a thing. It still exists. It's just no longer a factor in game purchase. I mean, you get it. The term got their shipment in and sold out are things of the past. Your mom accidentally using your copy of Halo as a damn drink coaster, that's also out the window. And of course, instant access for all us midnight game shoppers out there. Yeah, I really got a problem. And obviously the publishers embraced the shift purely for altruistic reasons. I mean, they looked at the massive environmental strain of stamping out millions of plastic discs and cases and, they bravely decided to step in and protect Mother Earth. Or they saw the opportunity to spend less and make more money. Shit, yeah. think it's probably the second one. Skipping the manufacturing and physical shipping completely changes the math for them. A game can quietly generate revenue for decades without anyone ever needing to authorize a new print run. Money saved on packaging, shipping, no secondhand market to compete against. It's all profit, basically. In these storefronts, they get a majority of that money when you purchase your game digitally versus purchasing it in a brick and mortar store. It's all about money. Now, on the positive flip side, it also throws a massive lifeline to games that would otherwise never survive the old retail gauntlet. A tiny indie project doesn't have to physically fight for space on Walmart's shelf competing against the likes of Call of Duty. A niche game can actually find an audience without relying on the fragile global distribution network. Because if we want to really be real, physical media did have plenty of its own bullshit to deal with. Discs eventually rotted, internal save batteries died, classic cartridges now cost a shit ton of money because collectors decided to make it their 401k. And honestly, one can argue that the physical releases barely even count. You buy a box and half the time the disc is just a polite plastic suggestion that maybe a game could possibly eventually probably happen later, assuming that the servers feel generous enough to let you download the mandatory massive day one patch. The one thing that is absolutely certain is that digital eliminated that friction of getting your hands on a video game. The problem for a lot of people is that friction is exactly where a ton of the best memories actually lived. All right, so this is the part where I show my amazing YouTuber prowess by actually talking about the premise of the video, the actual title. Pretty good at this. Because sure, you can download a game file, you can download a massive day one patch, hell, you can download whatever DLC they feel like charging you for today, but you absolutely can't download a physical shelf. And you definitely can't download the memory of spotting some weird box from across the aisle at Toys R Us. Now I know exactly how that sounds. Here we go again with the pure nostalgia, and I would counter that by saying, have you been watching the whole video? And also that the actual preservation data backs this up. The Video Game History Foundation, a very professional sounding place, found that about 87% of all classic games are just gone. They aren't in active release, meaning that the vast majority of gaming history isn't just sitting on some modern digital storefront waiting for somebody to legally click on it. When the physical media fades out and these digital storefronts eventually get unplugged, the real problem becomes that the history itself just gets way thinner. The raw code might survive on a server somewhere, but the entire world that existed around the game just completely breaks apart. And that stuff wasn't just cosmetic packaging, it was an actual context of an era. And I've gone this entire video without even touching on the whole digital ownership illusion, primarily because I don't believe digital ownership is a thing. I think it's bullshit. You're not buying a product when you click buy, you're buying a highly conditional license. You're basically renting some code until the server farm somewhere inevitably gets disconnected, or a company has some kind of licensing problem and decides to pull it from your library, which never happens, right? And that happens to be the one thing physical media did perfectly without even trying. It accidentally preserved your ownership and the whole context around a video game. A dusty box sitting in the back of somebody's closet in Yonkers will always hold way more actual history than a digital storefront that gets wiped and redesigned every console generation. Not to mention, that guy can just literally walk right into his closet now, wipe the dust off the case, pop the disc in, and never have to worry about a server somewhere in Virginia just suddenly going dark, or praying that a publisher didn't just randomly wipe the game from his library over some expired music license. It's a crazy concept, and I think we used to have a phrase for that. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, it was called actual ownership. What a concept, right? So where exactly does that leave us? Because we're obviously not going backwards anymore. Physical media is shrinking. Digital completely took over. It's not even a debate anymore. This is the market now. They've made the choice for you, whether you like it or not. And if we're being honest, we absolutely helped make that decision. I know I definitely did. I bought into the whole convenience trap. Yeah, I got tired of scratch this, that didn't boot up, massive walls of plastic boxes taking up space for games I probably were never going to finish anyway, even though I would argue I kind of want that one back. All that to say that, yeah, I get it. I'm definitely not sitting here pretending to be some kind of pure physical monk. And the majority of the games that I own currently exist purely within the ether. Yeah, and don't get it twisted. Even though I'm a person that's accepted that digital is the way forward for me, I know that by signing that contract, I've accepted all the shortcomings and the lack of ownership that comes along with it. I've made that choice. Choice being the prevailing word there. I mean, as a customer, we should always have a choice. And with Sony's store basically being a closed ecosystem, when physical goes away, so does a lot of that choice. The danger is when they take that choice away and we just pretend like nothing changed. I mean, physical media operated as this timeline. It was basically hard proof that a game actually passed through your life. It gave you something that you could possess, something that you could own, something that you could carry with you, lend out, resell, pass down. It was your property to do with as you wish. Look, the answer probably isn't to hoard every single physical game that's ever been created forever. I mean, physical media obviously has its own expiration date. Maybe the answer is better digital preservation, cleaner licensing, DRM-free options. Sadly, I don't have the answer. The problem is that it doesn't look like the gatekeepers have one either, or they just don't feel like they have to come up with one. The future is digital. That's 100% not going to change. But if everything becomes a download, from here on out, we have to get way more serious about saving the stuff we can't download. Removing a choice shouldn't be easy. It should be hard. They should have to face backlash. They should have to, at the very least, wonder if this was a good idea to begin with. And whether you're 100% digital or not, you need to understand that removing an option eventually affects every consumer. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day you're going to go and boot up your digital library and you're just going to find some dark gray blank square where a game you loved used to be.